Y'all having good conversations now. Hold on. Here you go. I want you to hear this.
The question I have, I'm not sure how to word it, but like when you're dealing with negative people. For example, like I went home to Detroit this weekend, was with a lot of old friends, and what I've realized is, I guess the couple years that I've been away,
you changed.
I've changed completely, and the stuff, and I'm not talking about just being in the streets or whatever, but the stuff that they want to do, or even the stuff that they want to talk about, it's just so kind of down and depressing. And it's not that I don't want to be their friends anymore, but
right.
That bond just isn't there. So how do you keep the friendship going? But then when you get to talking with them, and you get to dealing with them, it's kind of like, I really don't want to be here, and I really don't want to be bothered. Like, how do you balance that?
How do you keep the friendship going? Anybody? Pray. What else? Sometimes you have to let it go. Mother Colvin, you had your hand? Hold up. Set limits. I like that. So set limits, let's set boundaries. Mike, Q. So it's a question of whether you can be authentically yourself and draw them in the midst of that. Sometimes God sends us back to elevate them, or at least to inform them. Q, I'm going to come over here. That's Mother Coleman. That was you again?
We all know that those negative people, or as they would say, I'm just being realistic. Beware that. But for me, I have to realize what place I'm in. If it's something that I'm about to go after, first of all, I realize that everything that God shows me or God tells me about what I'm to do or where I'm going, I can't share with everybody because they can't see it. And because they can't see it, a lot of people can't operate past what they see. And so when there's a faith walk there, or even in business, if you're trying to dream big and go for the highly unlikely, it's a very vulnerable place. And so I have to I don't talk to those people who I know are going to go negative.
Go negative. So you give a positive response. So you try to stay positive, and they expect that from you, so they maybe stop them from even talking it. I think it's always good to weigh. A lot of us, there is a time where God will separate us from different people, and you just have to discern when that time is. And sometimes God will send you back to be able to minister to them. And the question is whether we develop the heart to minister to them, where we recognize that I was with them before. I was once them. In Scripture where Paul says, you were once one of them. The very thing that we're saying is profane. We were one of them. And we got to sometimes remember where we come from. I need to move on. Some of your... That's right.
They don't let it go and get that out, and sometimes they hold it in, and it become a physical, it affects them physically and maybe mentally.
Mm-hmm.
But they do need to let that out, and there has to be someone to hear them. Even though you say something positive, they need to release.
Yes.
Some people just don't realize that they're always negative.
Some people don't. Some people don't. And as we go back to anxieties, amen. Let us talk about another level of anxiety when it becomes a disorder. Anxiety becomes a disorder when it becomes so intense that it dominates a person's thoughts, feelings, and actions. thus preventing the person from living a normal life. Are you seeing it? When now the anxiety is controlling you. Your thoughts, your feelings, and actions, thus preventing the person from living a normal life. You have panic disorders. This is a list of all the anxiety disorders. Phobias, of course, is in there. Panic disorders. Obsessive-compulsive disorders. Post-traumatic stress disorders. Many of our troops have that. Acute stress disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, and substance-induced anxiety. Panic attacks, we can go into that a little bit more, but we won't. Let's just talk about phobias. That's my last thing on my fear chart. And phobias, anybody knows what a phobia is? Fear of what? Anything. Phobia, the English word, comes from the Greek word phobos, which means fear, flight, or dread. In the New Testament, the word for fear is usually phobos, Phobos, which in the Greek language first had the meaning of running or flight, and then later was referred to that which causes you to fly. Causes you. Phobias grow out of fear when the fear is clearly excessive and irrational, being out of proportion to the actual degree of the threat. Being out of proportion to the actual degree of the threat. The threat is an ant, but the phobia is a lion. It's just an ant, y'all, but it looks like a lion. Right? Here's another thing it says. Phobias is the fear is associated with avoidance behaviors, deliberately doing things differently to avoid becoming afraid. Thirdly, the fear is associated with decreased quality of life, which means curtailing your life, when you're shutting yourself down and can't really enjoy your life because of your phobias. And many people got different ones. Fear of being closed into tight quarters. Anybody got that one? Tight quarter? Fear of heights. Any fear of heights? All right, what phobias y'all got? Elevators. We got how many elevator phobias? Got a couple of elevators. Phobias. What else? Bridges. Basements. Fear of dark. Phobias. Any other phobias? Huh? Somebody say fear of being broke. All right. Question? Social situation. That's a major one. Embarrassment, shame, public. Somebody talked about public humiliation, same type of thing. There's a lot of social phobia. In fact, social phobia is probably impacting us more than some of the other ones. I'm going through this process really just try to help you identify where you are. If something sticks, say, okay, that's me. You don't have to scream out and say, that's my stuff. But I need to put it out there so you can find out where you are as it relates to phobias and fears, so we can really begin to attack underneath it what emotional angst or how the spirit of the enemy may be manipulating your emotional system that's kind of preventing your spiritual growth, hindering it, preventing you from growing in God. And if you find yourself at the same place spiritually year after year, it's very important that you look at your emotional system. What am I afraid of and why I'm still afraid of everything, or this or that, and be able to look at them, because it can be a tremendous hindrance. Now let's close out. We only have a few minutes with this thing on prayer. I gave you a couple of things last week. I think some of these things with prayer. Let me just read to you about prayer as we close, and we'll close it out in prayer as we close this session on prayer, because we talked about fear enough. Some of you may go home afraid. The thing that I wanted to really lift up tonight as it relates to prayer is that every one of us have to know that prayer, real prayer, is something that's learned. Real prayer is something that's learned. How many of you in this room has had a course on prayer? Have taken a course on prayer? Raise your hand. 1, 2. Benson, that's you. 3, 4, 5. Everybody look around. How many people we think we have right now? I ain't count. Ooh, maybe 45, 50? Real quick, 20, 30, 40, 35. We got four people who've been in a class, 5 people who've been in a class